She's not allowed to touch that. Elise Winter's voice snapped like the click of her heels against the marble floor, crisp and cold in the early morning lobby. The executive elevator hadn't even finished opening when she spotted Noah crouched near the janitor's cart, fingers gently tracing a row of glittery dinosaur stickers. Her gaze cut to the man holding the mop handle, uniformed, quiet, tired-eyed. Mason Cole didn't flinch. It keeps him from screaming. She blinked. He added almost lazily, "But go ahead. Pull him away if you want to hear what a real breakdown sounds like." Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. Her lips parted, closed. She said nothing. Just stood there, as if the elevator's doors opening behind her meant she shouldn't have to. Mason didn't offer more. He returned to wiping the lobby's far glass panel, letting the echo of his own calm threat settle in the silence. It wasn't the first time he'd seen her. Elise Winter arrived each morning, as if the building bowed before her. Black pumps, tailored charcoal coat, phone always pressed to her cheek, commands spilling from her mouth like coins onto cold stone. She never looked down, until her son did. Noah wasn't loud, he didn't speak. But something about the stickers, wild shapes, mismatched colors, glitter flaking onto tile, held him there every day like a ritual. He'd hover near them for a few minutes before school, just close enough to touch one and smile. No words, just touch and breath and quiet. Lucy, Mason's daughter, had put them there. "It's a present for the building," she'd said, proudly pressing a pink tiger onto the trash bin's side panel. He hadn't had the heart to stop her. After all, it was the only time they saw each other, those slivers of overlap when he clocked in and she waited for his sister to take her to school. So, the cart stayed covered in stickers, her sticker stars, her sticker world. Something bright in a job that asked him to vanish. And now, Elise Winter wanted it gone. That morning, Mason had felt it coming. Her glances had shifted from indifferent to irritated, first at the cart, then at her son's strange attachment to it. The moment she saw him crouching again, soft focus on a silver unicorn, her mouth had gone sharp, but she didn't press, not yet. Instead, she turned, her voice clipped to someone on her phone. "I'll need a sanitation report by 10. There's a janitor leaving his daughter's art project in the lobby." And just like that, she was gone. Behind her, Noah lingered for a beat longer. His fingers brushed a smiling green dinosaur. Then he stood and followed. Mason exhaled slowly and returned the mop to the bucket. His jaw was tight, but not from shame. He'd faced worse than insults muttered on Bluetooth headsets. He'd heard real screaming, broken lungs, ruptured arteries, the death rattle of breath slipping through blood. That kind of noise aged a man faster than years. Now, he just cleaned floors, not because he lacked options, but because options didn't matter when the only thing keeping your daughter fed was a job with insurance. When your past was a landmine and a last name one lawsuit away from dragging Lucy down with it. He rolled the cart toward the elevator, each wheel click reminding him that survival didn't need pride, it needed consistency. "Where are you watching from?" Because the woman in heels and cashmere had no idea what kind of man she'd just tried to intimidate, and by the time she realized it, she'd already put her son in his hands. The complaint came 12 hours later, tucked into a manila envelope left on the janitor locker bench like a warning shot. Mason didn't open it right away. He saw the building manager's stamp on the corner and already knew what it was: formal reprimand, violation of visual cleanliness protocol, unauthorized decorative elements, all the polite words they used instead of saying, "You embarrassed the wrong person." He slipped the envelope under his duffel and finished scrubbing out the grout lines in the second-floor restrooms. It wasn't until he was back in the locker room, his hands smelling faintly of bleach, that he sat down and unfolded the letter. Exactly what he expected. Elise Winter's signature wasn't on it, but it didn't need to be. Her power moved through this place without fingerprints, through assistants, policy reviews, whispered calls to the building's management firm. The stickers had to go. He stared at the typed words for a moment longer than necessary. The fluorescent light buzzed above, flickering in that slow, tired rhythm most people didn't notice unless they worked under it. He folded the paper, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it behind the locker door. That night, when Lucy skipped into the lobby after her aunt dropped her off, her eyes lit up the second she saw the cart. "Daddy, the purple ones are still sticking. See?" He didn't smile, not fully. "Lucy," he began, kneeling down to her height. She frowned. "What?" He gestured gently to the bin. "We might have to take the stickers off. Not all of them, just a few. People are saying it's too much." Her mouth opened like she might argue, then closed again. She looked at the cart as if it were a pet being taken to a shelter. Quietly, she reached for a peeling star. "This one's wrinkly anyway," she murmured. Together, they peeled off 3, the unicorn with one bent horn, the upside-down rainbow, the blue cat whose smile had faded from cleaning spray. She didn't cry. That made it worse. After she left for school, Mason wheeled the cart to the supply closet and stared at the remaining stickers. The cart looked bare now, like a window with the curtains torn halfway down. But he left the silver dinosaur. He didn't know why, except maybe he thought about Noah. The way the boy's fingers lingered on that exact spot. The quiet calm he carried like a gift. Or maybe a wound. Noah hadn't been back to the cart since that morning. Mason didn't know whether Elise had noticed her son's interest, or if she'd pulled him back without understanding why. He just knew the boy was missing from the morning rhythm, until the next day. It was early, barely 6:30, when Mason came out of the elevator, cart in tow. He moved with practiced quiet, feet gliding over tile like he was still in a trauma ward, trying not to wake the sleeping pain in every room. Then he saw him. Noah was already there, sitting cross-legged beside the wall, facing the cart. He hadn't touched anything, just watched, waiting. Mason hesitated. The boy didn't look up, but Mason could see his eyes tracking the edges of the cart, scanning the remaining stickers, focusing on the places where something used to be. "I had to take some off," Mason said softly. No reaction. He crouched down, careful not to get too close. She didn't like them. The grown-ups here don't think color belongs in the building. Still nothing. Mason reached into the side pouch of the cart and pulled out a folded Ziploc bag. He handed it forward, letting it hover in the space between them. "Lucy gave me extras, in case we lost any." Slowly, Noah reached out and took the bag. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then, without looking at him, Noah peeled off the back of a yellow sun and pressed it onto the exact spot the unicorn had been. He adjusted it once, smoothing the edge with a single finger, then placed the Ziploc neatly on the floor. He stood and walked away. Mason stayed where he was, watching the sun catch the first rays of light through the lobby's glass. For the first time since the complaint, the cart didn't look empty. He didn't hear the elevator open behind him, didn't hear the heels approach. Elise's voice, low and clipped, broke the quiet. "Did you give my son that bag?" He stood slowly. "No," Mason said. "He took it." She narrowed her eyes. "He doesn't take things. He did today." Elise looked past him, at the sticker. Her expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened. She turned without another word, stepping back into the elevator. This time, Mason didn't watch her go. He looked down at the cart, at the yellow sun, and he knew Noah was trying to say something. So was Lucy, and he wasn't taking either of them off. The email hit his inbox at 3:07 a.m. Subject, RE, Sanitation Uniform Compliance. Final notice. It wasn't about the stickers, not directly. It was about professional presentation and failure to maintain standard operating appearance and disregard for previously issued corrective actions. Mason stared at it while sitting on the concrete steps behind the building, the city lights flickering across, the alley walls like they were winking at him. His thermos of black coffee sat untouched beside him. Lucy's stickers were gone, except for the few that clung on, stubborn like memories that wouldn't peel clean. He scrolled back through the message and saw the warning again. One more deviation will result in formal disciplinary review. There it was. No mention of Noah. No acknowledgement that the cart had calmed a boy who hadn't spoken in weeks. Just silence, filtered through legal speak and passive threats. He took a sip of coffee. It tasted like burnt rubber and nerves. By the time he clocked in, he'd already made a decision. He would take the rest off. Not because they were right, but because he couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now. Lucy's cough had been getting worse. His sister said it was just allergies, but Mason had seen enough to know the difference. The kind of difference that meant blood tests. That meant waiting rooms. That meant bills. The cart waited by the maintenance elevator like a dog left in the rain. He approached it slowly, feeling each sticker like a bruise. His fingers hesitated on the silver dinosaur. That one had survived 2 washings. Lucy's favorite. But it wasn't Lucy who had placed the new yellow sun yesterday. It was Noah. He reached for it and stopped. Something tugged at him. Something more than nostalgia. Something like proof. Like if he removed it now, it would erase whatever small thread Noah had used to reach out. Instead, he reached for the older ones, the faded stars, the peeling planets. He was halfway through when he heard it. A faint shuffle of sneakers on tile. Noah. Standing just outside the line of light from the lobby's massive front windows, watching. Mason's hands dropped to his sides. Noah walked forward slowly, not making a sound, and crouched beside the cart. He touched the spot where the pink rabbit used to be. Then he looked up, eyes wide, unblinking, and Mason saw it. Confusion. Disappointment. Something dangerously close to grief. He said, "I have to take them off," Mason said gently. "I don't want to, but I have to." Noah didn't answer, of course, but he reached into his pocket and pulled out something, folded, creased. A sticker. Lucy's. One of the backup sheets Mason had tucked into the Ziploc and forgotten. A smiling cloud. Noah held it out. Not to Mason, to the cart. Mason didn't move. Noah placed the sticker himself, just above the handle, then stood up, brushed invisible dust from his pant legs, and turned away. That was the moment Mason knew he wouldn't remove another one. Not for a lease, not for management, not for a job that valued polished chrome more than a child's small triumph. The cart would stay as it was. And if they fired him, then at least he'd go, knowing he didn't erase something that mattered. He finished his rounds that morning, with the cloud sticker glinting in the reflection of every window he cleaned. Elise didn't appear that day. Her car wasn't at its usual reserved spot. The lobby remained silent, her absence stretching like a held breath across every tile. But her son came. At exactly 7:08 a.m., Noah stepped off the elevator and walked to the cart as if it were part of his morning ritual. He didn't bring a sticker this time. He brought something else. A drawing, crayons, uneven lines, a green stick figure with a mop, a pink blob with stars around it, and 2 smaller shapes, one with curly hair, the other with a square cart beside it. A speech bubble floated from the green stick figure. It said nothing, just empty. But Mason understood it. He took the drawing gently and folded it once, placing it into his shirt pocket like it was something sacred. Noah sat beside the cart for a minute, touched the silver dinosaur, then got up and disappeared into the elevator again. That evening, Mason stayed late, past shift end, past the building going quiet. He pulled out the drawing and pinned it to the inside of his locker. That's where it would stay. Not for anyone else, just for him. So he wouldn't forget what dignity looked like when you refused to throw it away, even when you were told to. The rooftop gaula shimmered like a private constellation above the city. Glass chandeliers, crystal flutes, and silk-lined murmurs moving from one corner of power to the next. It wasn't meant for anyone like Mason, but he was there anyway, pushing his cart along the service path behind the catering crew, invisible by design. He kept his head down, not because he felt small, but because his job worked best when people forgot he existed. Tonight, the building's lead tenant, Winter Technologies, was hosting its annual donor celebration. The place was crawling with men who mistook cufflinks for character, and women whose heels cost more than Mason's monthly paycheck. The speeches had started an hour ago. Now came the drinks and flattery. Mason busied himself wiping down the chrome banisters leading to the lower tier of the rooftop. It wasn't part of his normal route, but maintenance had logged a scuff mark from the last setup crew, and he'd been sent to deal with it before the donors arrived. He didn't mind. From up here, the city looked honest, less polished, more real. He didn't expect to see her. Elise Winter stepped out of the VIP elevator like a queen arriving late to her own coronation, dressed in a deep violet gown, diamond cuffs glittering at her wrists, and a sleek bun that caught every breeze like it had been styled to command the wind itself. Mason didn't look directly at her, but he noticed the hush that followed her entry. Even the waitstaff stood a little straighter. She didn't scan the crowd for her son. She wouldn't have found him here anyway. Noah was at home with a private aide. Elise had made sure of that. Mason returned to his cloth, working the smudge from the railing. He didn't expect her to notice him, but she did. Her gaze flicked toward him once, then away, like someone seeing an out-of-place fixture. He was wearing the same uniform he always did, gray sleeves rolled to the elbow, collar threadbare, a faint bleach stain on one cuff. No stickers tonight. The cart had stayed on the ground floor. This wasn't a night for cartoons and stars, just money, and people pretending to be more than what they were. From his position, he could hear snatches of conversation, mergers, venture rounds, someone bragging about automated labor restructuring, as if firing people was a software update. He moved down the railing, keeping to the edges. "And you're telling me he let his child decorate the equipment?" a voice said behind him, half laughing. "Can't imagine that'd fly in a clean lab." "No," came the reply, sharp with condescension. "But it did fly under Elise's nose for weeks. Little boy loved it, apparently. Says a lot, doesn't it?" Mason froze for just a second, enough to breathe it in, file it away. They didn't know he was listening. Elise passed near him again, this time closer, glass in hand, nodding at someone's joke. Her smile was immaculate, effortless, trained, but her eyes weren't laughing. Mason could see it. Beneath the veneer, the tension pulled tighter. Something inside her didn't sit right tonight. Maybe it was the way Noah had looked at that cart. Maybe it was the fact that for all her influence, her son had found comfort not in her home, or her doctors, or her endless consultants, but in something that came from a janitor's daughter and a sheet of $2 stickers. He returned to the elevator shaft alcove, waited as a busboy passed, then pulled out the folded drawing from his pocket. The one Noah had made. He didn't open it, just held it, thumb brushing the paper edge. He wasn't angry. That was the part no one ever seemed to understand. His pride didn't flare at slights. He'd seen too much for that. But what he did notice, what he never forgot, was how fast the powerful moved to erase what they didn't understand. A sticker here, a drawing there, a child's quiet joy, dismissed before anyone stopped to ask what it meant. Mason slipped the paper back into his pocket and turned to leave. As he moved behind the curtain wall leading to the service elevator, he heard Elise's voice, clear and composed. "He was just doing his job," she said. The tone was neutral, neither defense nor apology. But the words hung there. Mason didn't slow, didn't look back. He stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the basement level, and waited for the doors to close. The gala carried on above him, but a shift had started, small, fractured, like the first hairline crack in a marble facade. And deep inside, Mason knew, those were the kinds that spread the farthest. The crayon lines were thick and jagged, but Mason recognized the shapes immediately. He found the drawing in the hallway outside the janitor's closet, neatly folded, resting on top of his supply cart. The paper had been weighed down with a plastic water bottle cap, Noah's way of making sure it didn't blow away. Mason knelt and picked it up. It showed the sticker-covered cart again, drawn in the center with exaggerated wheels and stars. Next to it was a tall figure in gray holding a mop, and beside him, a smaller figure in a red triangle dress, Lucy no doubt, with curly hair and giant pink circles for cheeks. Off to the side, another smaller figure stood beneath a yellow sun. No face, no words. Just a drawn presence, alone, yet clearly part of the scene. Noah. Mason turned the page over. No signature, no message. Just 3 dots in the corner, blue, green, and yellow, smudged from where crayon must have pressed too hard. A quiet chill crept into him. Not fear, something else. Recognition. He'd worked with autistic children in the trauma ward. Knew the signs, the language of shape and space. He remembered a boy who wouldn't speak, but drew hospital vivu bags with surgical accuracy. Another who panicked at the sound of latex gloves. What looked like obsession to outsiders was often communication, coded, visual, sacred. Noah was trying to say something. The hallway light flickered overhead as Mason refolded the page and tucked it into his back pocket. He turned toward the closet to begin his usual morning prep, and paused. There was a new sticker on the cart, one he hadn't seen before. It was a cracked heart, outlined in silver, pressed just beneath the handlebar. Not Lucy's style. It had come from Noah. Mason looked down the hallway. No footsteps, no sound. But he felt the boy's presence as if he'd just left a moment ago. A trace of breath still lingering in the air. He leaned against the closet door for a second and closed his eyes. He didn't know what made his chest tighten more, the loneliness Noah must carry every day, or the fact that this fragile, glitter-stuck cart had become the only place where he seemed safe enough to express it. By the time he finished stocking supplies, the lobby had started to hum with footsteps and caffeine breath. Business as usual, except it wasn't. Not anymore. Because for the first time in weeks, Noah didn't just pause by the cart. He stayed. He sat cross-legged beside it like a sentry, watching people stream past. Some glanced, some smirked. No one said anything. Not until Elise stepped out of the elevator and caught sight of her son planted next to the cart like he'd grown from the tile itself. "Noah," she said, her tone tight. "Get up, sweetheart. You're not supposed to sit there." He didn't move. Mason, standing a few feet away with his mop, said nothing. He didn't need to. He could feel Elise's discomfort blooming by the second. "Noah," she repeated, louder now. "Let's go." The boy reached out and touched the silver dinosaur. That was when it happened. Elise's voice cracked, not in volume, but in something deeper, a fracture of tone. "I said," but she didn't finish, because Noah suddenly rose and walked to her, not with fear, not with urgency, with calm precision. Then he reached into her clutch purse, gently, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it toward Mason. She froze. "Noah, what are you—" Mason took the paper, unfolded it, another drawing. But this time, it was different. It showed Elise, clear as day, her signature coat, her high bun, and in her hands, 3 torn pieces of paper, each one colored like a sticker. Mason looked up. His mouth didn't move, but his eyes asked the only question that mattered. "Do you see him now?" Elise didn't meet his gaze. Instead, she took her son's hand and led him silently back into the elevator, leaving the image of herself behind, drawn, exposed, held up not by words, but by her child's silent grief. When the elevator doors closed, Mason turned the drawing over. On the back was a single crayon word, written with a shaky hand. Fix. He didn't know if Noah meant the stickers, or the silence between them. But either way, something had cracked open. And it wasn't just the elevator doors. The stairwell was cold. Not the kind of cold you notice right away, but the sterile kind. Concrete walls, metal railings, tile that never warmed, even in the sun. Mason had been in places like this before. Emergency stairwells in hospitals, trauma centers, parking garage corners where people broke down in silence because no one could hear them scream. He heard the first scream before he reached the landing. It wasn't a sound of fear. It was panic twisted through a child's lungs. Short, erratic gasps, feet scuffing tile, a single choked syllable stuck on repeat. Mason dropped the mop. The stairwell door swung open with a jarring clang. At the mid-floor landing, Noah was curled against the wall, arms over his head, body trembling. Elise stood beside him, frozen. Her heels had been kicked off, one lying several feet away. Her hair was loose, one hand gripping the metal railing, like it was the only thing keeping her from sinking through the floor. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, eyes locked on Mason, as if he'd just materialized out of the concrete. Noah's breathing was collapsing inward, too fast, no rhythm. His knees jerked with each inhale like his ribs were trying to outrun his heart. Mason didn't answer. He knelt beside the boy in one fluid movement, hand low, voice even. "Noah, you're okay. I'm here." The boy didn't respond, but his body reacted, just enough to shift toward the sound. Elise hovered, half reached forward, then stepped back like she might shatter the moment if she breathed too loud. Mason opened his satchel. Not for a first aid kit. He didn't carry one anymore. Just a clean cloth and a small sticker sheet Lucy had slipped into his bag last week. The emergency kind, she called it. In case the day gets too heavy, Daddy. He pulled off a sticker, blue whale, and pressed it gently onto the back of Noah's hand. The boy's breath caught, froze, then stuttered, still fast, but less sharp. Mason kept his voice low and steady. You remember the cloud sticker? You picked that one. It's still there, still smiling. Noah's fingers twitched. Mason slowly tapped the floor, one rhythm at a time. 1-2-3. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. The boy's shoulders began to settle. His eyes blinked, rapid, disoriented, but focusing. Elise dropped to her knees suddenly, her dress crumpling beneath her. What just happened? Sensory overload, Mason said softly without looking at her. It wasn't the stairs, it was the echo. Too many floors, too many sounds. I didn't, her voice broke. He never does this, not like this. Mason pulled off another sticker, a green fish, and held it toward Noah without touching him. The boy reached for it after a pause and placed it on the edge of his sleeve. He probably warned you, Mason said, still calm. Not with words, with hesitation. With silence, Elise's eyes brimmed, mascara collecting at the corners. He was fine until She trailed off, biting the edge of her lip. I just told him to come with me. I didn't think the stairs would... They always look like the escape plan, Mason murmured, until they're not. Noah let out a long, shaky breath. The tremor in his shoulders faded, his hands now relaxed in his lap. Mason nodded, low and sure. You did good, Noah. Real good. He looked up at Elise for the first time. She'll learn to listen better next time, he added. Elise didn't respond. She couldn't. Her voice was somewhere buried beneath the shock and guilt, behind years of assuming money replaced comprehension. Mason reached into his bag and handed her a third sticker, a plain yellow circle. What's this for? She asked numbly. He met her eyes. To remind him the sun comes back. Elise stared at the sticker as if it were burning her hand. Her lip quivered, but she said nothing. By the time Mason helped Noah to his feet, the boy had steadied. No tears, just the slow, tired calm that follows a storm. He didn't look afraid anymore, just tired. Mason led him out of the stairwell without ceremony. Elise followed. She didn't speak again, not in the hallway, not in the elevator, not when she took Noah's hand and walked him silently to her private car parked outside the service entrance. She only looked back once, right as the doors opened, and her eyes found Mason, not with pity, not with superiority, with something else, the first crack of understanding, and the quiet terror of realizing she had missed something that truly mattered. The building was quiet the next morning, almost reverent, like it had absorbed what happened in the stairwell and didn't know how to process it. Mason arrived early, earlier than usual. He didn't bring Lucy today, asked his sister to keep her home for the morning, not because of Elise, not because of the complaint file still sitting unread in his locker, but because something had shifted. He needed space to feel it without distraction. The stairwell echoed in his memory, Noah's breath catching, Elise's eyes wide with helplessness. But more than that, Mason remembered the moment the boy had calmed. The stickers, the rhythm, the touchless reassurance. He remembered the look Noah gave him right before they stood, trust, quiet, and full, like Mason had reached through a door no one else even saw. He wheeled the cart out, slower than usual, and paused at the main lobby tiles. There it was. The blue whale, still pressed to the boy's jacket when he left, now stuck gently to the side of the marble planter near the window. Mason touched it once. It was damp from the dew in the air, curling slightly at the corners. Noah had come back this morning, early, and left it there, a sign, a gesture, a thank you. Mason reached into his back pouch and pulled out the folded crayon drawing Noah had given him earlier that week. He'd planned to tape it inside the closet like the others, but now, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he tucked it behind the building's fire inspection clipboard at the security desk instead. Half visible, tucked beneath the regulations and sign-in sheets. Let someone else see it for once. He was polishing the interior glass of the elevator when the familiar chime sounded and Elise stepped in. She wasn't wearing heels, just flats, slacks, A soft navy sweater, no jewelry, no coat. Her face looked like she'd slept maybe 2 hours, if that. She didn't look at him right away. Just stepped into the elevator and stood silently as the doors closed. He kept polishing, a quiet stroke, cloth across chrome, one swipe at a time. You used to be a nurse. Her voice cracked the silence. Mason paused, just for a second, then continued wiping. Yes. She faced forward. Emergency? Yes. Trauma? Yes. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking, just slightly. I looked you up. He said nothing. She continued, voice thinner now. Mason Cole, graduated top 5 from Calworth Medical, joined Night Ridge Trauma Unit, then went private, then my wife got sick, Mason said. She flinched, not from the words, from how steady he said them. I sold everything to pay for her treatment, he added, and when the insurance denied her trial program, I altered a billing code, once. He turned and met her gaze. I knew it was wrong. I also knew it was the only way she'd get care in time. And the hospital? They fired me. I lost my license. Could have fought it. But I was already drained. My daughter was 2. I needed work. I needed health coverage. Elise's face twisted slightly. Guilt, disbelief, maybe awe. You clean floors, she whispered, after saving lives. No, Mason said. I clean floors so I can keep saving one. Silence. The elevator stopped at the executive level. Neither of them moved. Elise exhaled shakily and leaned back against the mirrored wall. I've spent a decade thinking money solved everything. It solves bills, Mason replied. Not breath, not stillness, not trust. Noah, her voice cracked. He won't talk to me, not with words, not like he does with you. He doesn't talk to me either, Mason said, but he shows me. You just haven't learned how to see it yet. She looked at him then, really looked, like he wasn't just the janitor she'd walked past for months, like he was something she didn't have a category for. How did you know, she asked, that the stairwell would panic him? She nodded. I've been in places like that, he said. You learn to read the shadows. Her shoulders lowered, and Mason saw it the moment her armor cracked, not completely, just enough for air to get through. When the elevator opened, Elise didn't step out. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out something folded, a small blue envelope. She held it toward him. For Lucy, he hesitated. It's not money, she added. It's just a letter from Noah. He took it. She stepped out and disappeared around the corner. Mason looked down at the envelope. In crayon, on the back, were 3 words, shaky, barely legible. Stickers help me. He closed his hand around it, and for the first time since the day his wife passed, he allowed himself to smile, not because something was fixed, but because something, finally, had started to heal. Mason sat alone in the janitor's break room, the envelope still in his hand. He hadn't opened it yet. The note from Noah, written in blunt crayon and sealed with uncoordinated edges, felt heavier than paper. It held the kind of weight that came from silence finally being broken. Not just Noah's, but Mason's too. For months he'd swept the same halls, scrubbed the same tiles, and gone unnoticed except when someone wanted something removed. Now, a child had written him a letter, and that meant the world had already shifted. He tucked it into his shirt pocket, close to the heart, and headed out with the cart. This time, the stickers stayed. He made no apologies for them. Lucy had added 2 new ones the night before, an orange sunburst with glitter lines and a small cartoon nurse with a teddy bear. This one looks like you, Daddy, she'd said, beaming. He didn't tell her that it hurt more than it helped. He just kissed her forehead and said, thank you. The lobby was quiet when he rolled in, polished wheels clicking softly over stone. The guard at the front desk gave him a nod, not the usual distracted one, but a full glance and a faint smile. It was small, almost nothing, but not nothing. By mid-morning, Elise hadn't shown up. Neither had Noah. Mason didn't expect them to. Not after yesterday, not after the stairwell. Still, he checked the planter for another sticker. Checked the elevator glass for a new drawing. Nothing. Instead, he received a call. The landline at the service desk never rang, unless someone was missing a badge or complaining about paper towels. But today, the receptionist handed him the receiver with a raised brow. "It's for you," she said, "from upstairs." He took the call. "Elise Winter," came the voice on the other end, tired but clear. "I'm sending someone down with a box." Mason said nothing. "You'll understand when you see it." The line went dead. 10 minutes later, a delivery intern wheeled out a sleek black box on a dolly. It looked like it belonged in a tech unboxing video. Carbon casing, velvet-lined edges, and a seal that read, "Winter Initiative, Internal Only." The intern left it at Mason's feet and scurried away. Mason opened it slowly. Mason didn't laugh. Not quite. But he let out a long breath that sounded suspiciously close to one. He installed the wrap himself in the break room, smoothing it across the panels with practiced hands. The colors popped beneath the overhead lights, crayon bright, unapologetic, joyful. The laminated placard was mounted to the top handle. It clicked into place like it had always belonged there. When he rolled the card out again, something was different. People noticed, not with annoyance, but with curiosity. Heads tilted. One executive even stopped in passing and asked, "Did your kid draw that?" Mason nodded. The man smiled, muttered something about "better than my son's therapist," and walked away. Later that afternoon, he spotted something near the baseboard by the main elevators. Another drawing, folded, left deliberately. He knelt and picked it up. This one showed a stairwell, crudely drawn, but unmistakable. Noah stood at the bottom, small, hands at his sides. At the top, a dark scribble marked a figure, larger, faceless. Between them, a string of colors ran down the steps like a path. Stickers. He turned the page. On the back, one sentence. "Can the cart come home?" Mason blinked. It was a request, or a hope. A bridge between Noah's world and Elise's home, made of stickers and paper, and a janitor who once saved lives. By closing time, Mason wheeled the cart back to the closet, but not before stopping at the receptionist's desk. "Can you send a message upstairs?" he asked. She raised a brow. He smiled gently. "Tell Elise, I have a second wrap, if she wants it at home." The woman nodded slowly. "You sure?" Mason looked at the cart, at the laminated sign, at the blue whale, at the tiny nurse. "Yeah," he said, "I'm sure." And for the first time, he left the cart out in the open, unlocked, uncovered, unhidden. Because it wasn't just his anymore. It was Noah's, and Lucy's, and maybe even Elise's. The package arrived in the evening, wrapped in plain brown paper, and dropped at Mason's apartment door with no note. Lucy found it first. "Daddy, did you order something?" she asked, dragging the box in with the strength only a determined 6-year-old possessed. Mason shook his head. "Nope." He sliced the tape carefully and lifted the flaps. Inside was another cart wrap, identical to the one in the building lobby, but this one folded with precision, sealed in plastic, and topped with a single post-it note. Just 4 words. For home. E.W. Lucy's eyes widened. "That's our stickers." Mason smiled. "Looks like they're going to live here too." She immediately began pulling it from the packaging. "Can we put it on my toy chest?" He crouched down beside her, helping stretch the wrap gently across the wooden box at the foot of her bed. The colors lit up her room like a sunrise, brighter even than they had at work. Later, after she'd gone to sleep with a hand resting on a glitter bunny, Mason sat in the hallway, staring at the box. Elise hadn't just sent it for Noah. She'd sent it for them. For Lucy. For the man she'd once tried to erase with a form letter and a phone call. He let the moment breathe. Then, quietly, he pulled out his phone and typed a short message. He's welcome to come visit. Lucy made space for his drawings. He didn't expect a reply. So, when his phone buzzed 10 minutes later, he stared at the screen for a long moment before opening it. From Elise Winter. Message, Saturday afternoon. He's been drawing suns all morning. Saturday came with soft light and no urgency. Noah arrived with Elise, holding her hand until they reached the apartment threshold. He let go the moment he saw the toy chest. Lucy waved him over without hesitation. "We saved the top corner," she said proudly. For your son! Noah didn't speak, but he stepped forward and placed a yellow cutout, carefully drawn and snipped in the exact spot she pointed to. The two of them sat beside each other without speaking, flipping through sticker sheets, swapping colors. Mason stood near the doorway, watching quietly. Elise remained by the hall mirror, hands clasped, unsure of where to place herself. "They're good together," Mason said gently. She nodded. "He's calmer when he's here." "Because it's not polished," he replied. "It's real." Elise looked around his apartment, the scuffed wood floors, the crooked bookshelf, the dining table that doubled as an art station and mail sorter. Then her gaze landed on the framed photo above the couch, a younger Mason, in hospital scrubs, holding a newborn Lucy. His wife beside him, radiant, alive. "You didn't just lose a job," she said. "No," he agreed. They stood in silence for a beat too long. Then Elise inhaled and said the words she hadn't let herself before. "I'm sorry I made it worse." Mason didn't reply immediately. Because the thing about apologies, real ones, is that they can't be met with easy answers. They had to sit for a while, breathe. Eventually he nodded. "You didn't know." "I should have." He looked toward the kids, now decorating a paper crown with sticker dolphins. "You're trying," he said. "That matters." She stepped further into the apartment, not imposing, just present. "I've spent years fixing systems," she murmured, "designing solutions. But this isn't something I can blueprint." "You don't need a blueprint," Mason said. "You need to sit beside the cart." She smiled faintly, understanding the metaphor. They sat down across from the kids. Noah handed Elise a sun-shaped sticker, already peeled. Without hesitation, she pressed it onto her wrist like it belonged there. Lucy giggled. "You're glowing." "I think that's the point," Elise replied. Hours passed like minutes. By late afternoon, Noah had drawn 3 more pictures, one of the cart at school, one of Lucy and him with matching stars, and one of Mason holding a mop like a sword. Elise took a photo of the last one. She didn't say why, but her eyes said it all. Recognition, respect. A quiet honoring of what she'd nearly dismissed. Before they left, Noah turned to Mason and held out a sheet of stickers. One of them, a small purple octopus, was half torn. Mason took it anyway. And when the door closed behind them, he stuck it right next to the nurse on the toy chest. 2 stickers side by side, worn, imperfect, but still shining. By Monday morning, the lobby felt different. It wasn't the lighting, same soft halogens, or the polished tile. It was the way people walked through it now. A few glanced at the cart longer, 1 or 2 nodded, and someone, a woman in accounting, Mason thought, left a small stack of unused stickers on the corner of his mop bin. No note, just quietly placed, like a thank you whispered through action. The laminated placard still read, "Emotional Support Zone," but now someone had doodled tiny hearts in dry erase marker near the border. Mason didn't erase them. He didn't have to. The cart was no longer a target. It had become a landmark. Even security, who used to stiffen at anything not regulation, started calling it the quiet cart, not mocking, more like reverent, as if it had earned a place by surviving scrutiny with kindness intact. He was cleaning the 6th-floor conference hallway when a door creaked open behind him. "Mason?" It was Elise. He turned slowly, cloth still in hand. "Got a minute?" she asked. He followed her into the conference room, a sweeping space usually reserved for executive summits and board decisions. The table stretched 12 feet, sleek and cold. But today, the walls were lined with foam boards, mock-ups, sketches, layouts. She gestured toward them. "I've been working on this all weekend." Mason studied the images. Prototypes for children's, spaces inside corporate buildings, a sensory-friendly waiting area, a family-inclusive workspace pilot, conference rooms with adjacent play corners, and in every sketch, tucked subtly into a corner, was a janitor cart, wrapped in stickers. "I'm calling it the Winter Warmth Initiative," she said. He blinked. "Warmth?" She gave a half laugh. "I know, it doesn't sound like me." He raised an eyebrow. "I mean that in a good way," she added quickly. "I've been known as cold for years, and I earned that reputation. I built walls, high ones. I thought being untouchable made me credible. She stepped closer to the nearest board, pointing at a tiny cartoon whale in one of the mock-ups. But Noah changed that. Or maybe you did. Mason didn't speak, but something behind his sternum tightened. I want to start in this building, she continued. Convert one of the unused fourth-floor wings into a pilot space. I've already cleared it with the property board. Mason crossed his arms. What does this have to do with me? I want you consulting on it. He stared. Not cleaning, she clarified. Consulting, designing, building the emotional logic. You've lived it. You've seen what we miss. I'm not a therapist, he said quietly. Number? You're better, she said. You listen, without an agenda. That's rarer than you think. He looked at the designs again. One had Lucy's son. Another had Noah's blue whale. Subtle, barely visible, but present, like ghosts of color reminding the walls to be kind. I've seen tech companies install quiet rooms and then fill them with deadlines, Elise said. I don't want a gesture. I want substance. I want something real. He glanced over at her. And you think the janitor with a record can help you build that? She didn't blink. I think he already has. Silence hung between them. Then Mason stepped forward and gently pulled a marker from the edge of one board. Without asking, he made a correction to a hallway curve that would cause echo reverb. Move this. Narrow the arch. Sound dies here, he said. Elise smiled. Exactly. By the end of the week, Elise issued a company-wide memo. It was brief, simple. Effective immediately, the fourth-floor East Wing will undergo renovation as the first prototype of the Winter Warmth Initiative. This project was inspired by unexpected wisdom in our community and is guided by those who understand what comfort means when no one's watching. More to come. Mason never asked to be named. But the next morning, someone taped a copy of the memo beside his cart. A red heart had been doodled in the corner. Lucy saw it when she arrived. Is that yours? She asked, pointing to the line about unexpected wisdom. Mason just shrugged. She grinned. Sounds like you. He started to push the cart forward, but paused. Taped beside the wheel was a new drawing. Noah's. It showed a small boy standing beside a tall man, both holding mop handles like they were flags. Around them were children, stickers falling like rain. Above them all was a banner, crayon scrawled, crooked, but legible. Places where people feel safe. Mason folded it once, carefully. Then he taped it next to the placard. He didn't need his name on the wall. He just needed the sun to stay up. The fourth-floor wing was stripped bare within 3 days. What had once been a forgotten row of disused offices, brown carpeting, rattling vents, a copier that hadn't worked in years, was now bathed in early sunlight through uncovered windows. The old fluorescent tubes had been pulled down, walls scrubbed, every trace of sterile indifference peeled away. Mason stood in the middle of the space, arms crossed, watching as a contractor carefully painted the first patch of wall in soft seafoam green. Lucy had picked the color. Elise had approved it without a word of hesitation. He wasn't wearing his janitor uniform, not today. Elise had handed him a plain gray shirt and a lanyard that read, Winter Initiative, Design Advisor the day before. He'd rolled his eyes, but didn't take it off. Noah sat in the corner on a beanbag, sketching. No one had told him what to draw. He just did it. Quietly. Naturally. Lucy was beside him, humming as she cut construction paper into tiny suns. A few employees from other departments had stopped in throughout the morning, curious. None of them laughed. A few even asked where to put their sticker donations. Elise had set up a tray for them by the door. It was nearly full. There was a knock on the glass. Mason turned. It was Gregor, head of facilities. The same man who had signed the original complaint against the stickers. His shirt was pressed, clipboard in hand. Mason opened the door. Didn't expect to see you here, he said evenly. Gregor cleared his throat. Got an email from upstairs. Said you'd be heading the soft launch preview. Mason gestured inside. Come in. Gregor took 2 steps in and stopped short. He saw the drawing wall, already lined with crayon sketches and paper stickers from Lucy and Noah. He saw the mats arranged by color tone to reduce visual overstimulation. He saw the soundproofed corner booth for kids who needed quiet. But most of all, he saw the cart. Wrapped in the familiar vinyl, it sat parked near the window, untouched, undiminished. Gregor blinked. That's the same cart? Mason nodded. Elise's idea? Mason tilted his head. Number mine. Gregor shifted uncomfortably. Listen, I want to apologize for the way the complaint was handled. It's handled, Mason said simply. Then, after a pause, want to help with something? Gregor looked caught off guard. Me? We need someone to install the mobile display rack near the reading mats. It's got a tilt sensor, makes noise if it wobbles too much. Thought maybe the guy who cares about facility safety might want to make sure it doesn't. Gregor looked at him, then at Noah, then nodded. Yeah, I can do that. By late afternoon, the pilot wing felt less like a project and more like a place. Elise walked in wearing jeans and a white linen blouse, hair loose, no phone in hand. She took in the space with a slow sweep of her gaze. She smiled, soft and real, when she saw Noah curled up, reading beside Lucy. She didn't speak right away. She let it breathe. Then, you made this feel like a memory. Mason stood beside her, arms folded, watching his daughter try to teach Noah the rules of a card game she hadn't learned herself. I didn't make it, he said. They did. I just stopped getting in the way. Elise turned to him. It's going citywide. I already approved the budget this morning. Winter Tech locations in 3 districts. 1 in the main tower, 1 downtown, 1 near the hospital district. Mason didn't answer. He watched Noah laugh, briefly suddenly, at something Lucy said. The sound was small, but it existed. And that was enough. Elise hesitated. There's one more thing. She pulled a folder from her bag and handed it to him. Inside was a document titled Petition for Reinstatement, Nursing License Review. Mason's breath caught. I reached out to your former hospital, she said. I found the old board decision. I spoke with 2 of the physicians who signed off. They're willing to write statements if you file. You were punished for saving someone you loved. The world's changed since then. He stared at the form. Elise waited. You don't have to, she added quietly. But I thought maybe... It's time. Mason slowly closed the folder. I don't know if I'd go back, he said. You don't have to decide yet. They stood there a moment longer. Then Elise turned to go, but paused in the doorway. Oh, and Mason? He looked up. If you do file, I'd be honored to write the first letter of recommendation. He didn't reply, but his hand gripped the folder a little tighter. And in the corner of the room, as the sunlight shifted across the wall of stickers and drawings, a small boy and a small girl began building something new, out of paper, glue, and laughter. The plaque wasn't fancy, just brushed steel with black engraving mounted beside the newly painted door on the 4th floor wing. It read, The Coal Room for those who listen, even when no one speaks. Mason hadn't asked for it. Elise hadn't told him in advance. It just appeared the morning of the public launch, already drilled in place. He ran his fingers across the etched letters in silence. Lucy stood beside him, dressed in her favorite yellow overalls, a glitter sticker sun beaming from her shirt pocket. Is that for us? She asked. No, Mason said quietly, then smiled. It's for everyone like us. Inside, the space buzzed with soft excitement. Employees walked, through with coffee cups and wide eyes. Executives who once never noticed the janitor were now asking him about sensory zones and echo dampening. Someone from a city council office had even requested a consultation, wanted to see if this model could be replicated in municipal buildings. But Mason didn't care about the press. He cared about the kids sitting quietly by the sticker wall, sketching suns with surprising precision. Noah had become the unspoken heart of the initiative. He still didn't say much, but he didn't need to. His drawing said more than words ever could. Mason had given him a journal with thick pages and quiet colors. Every day, a new entry appeared, and now an entire wall had been reserved just for his work. That morning, Elise arrived without an entourage. She wore a simple blazer and flats, hair loosely pinned. She greeted the city rep, shook hands with the architect, and then quietly made her way to the drawing wall. She stared at a sketch Noah had done the night before. Mason standing beside a little girl, both holding mop handles that transformed mid-drawing into paintbrushes. The the background shifting from gray tiles to warm skies. She wiped at her cheek, once, quickly. Then she crossed the room. "You saw the plaque?" she asked. "I did." She hesitated. "Too much?" "No," Mason said. "It's honest." There was a pause. Comfortable this time. "Elise," he said, "what made you change your mind about all this?" She looked around the room, watched Noah silently hand Lucy a sticker, listened to a nearby executive ask Mason if the quiet floor mats could be installed in all meeting rooms, took in the laughter, quiet, respectful, free. Then she met his eyes. "You did." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, long after the building emptied, Mason stayed behind. He didn't have to. He wasn't scheduled. But he'd brought the cart up anyway, his original one, now permanently stationed in the room. He knelt beside it, checking the wheels, wiping down the handle, adjusting the new wrap. The stickers were sealed beneath a clear laminate now, weatherproofed, permanent. No more peeling, no more erasing. A soft shuffle caught his attention. Noah stood in the doorway, holding a folded piece of paper. Mason rose and walked toward him. The boy handed him the page without a word, then pointed to the cart. Mason opened it. Inside was a final drawing. It showed the cart, alone in a spotlight. Around it, figures gathered, some with badges, some with ties, some with tool belts, all looking toward it. At the center of the cart was a framed sticker. The Silver Dinosaur. Beneath it, 2 words written in tight, careful print. "Safe place." Mason placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I'll keep it safe," he said. Noah smiled, then turned and walked back down the hall. Back at home, Mason hung the drawing beside Lucy's bed. She didn't ask why. She just smiled in her sleep and shifted toward it. The world hadn't changed overnight, but a floor had opened, a room had been built, a child had spoken through stickers and crayon suns, and somewhere along the way, a janitor had become the architect of safety. Not through power, not through revenge, but through presence, through listening, through the refusal to let a child's voice be wiped away like a scuff mark. And now, the whole city might follow. Subscribe, and don't miss our next story. Single dad janitor built her a cardboard castle out of trash. Didn't know her billionaire mom is filming it. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?